Today we're going to have a webinar in Communique for Amazon Seller Central. We have a new release going out next day or so. It'll be Build 200, and this webinar will talk about the various different things that we've added and some other issues regarding our ASC integrator and things of that nature. I will be presenting. My name is Tom Martin-Altarian and Roxanne Brown from Professional Business Solutions for You. Hello, Roxanne.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with the webinar. And a couple of housekeeping chores here. Use the questions tab to submit questions or communicate problems. We will conduct a Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you're using audio through GoToMeeting, go to Webinar for best results. Close email, messenger, or any program which uses bandwidth. Today's presentation is being recorded, and we should have it up online by tomorrow latest. A data disclaimer, we are using representative real-world data, but due to testing and things like that, some of the stuff may not quite make sense, but don't worry about that. Okay, so next slide. We're going to talk about our ASC integrator for Communique, and let me show you what we have here. So here running on the tray is our ASC integrator. Okay, now we haven't, let's get back up on the screen here. We haven't released it officially yet. We'll probably get that out sometime this week. We've actually been running this for 4 months continuously, made a few tweaks here or there. Those that have been using it have been reporting, great success with it. So we feel very confident at this point that we can release it publicly. We're in the process of doing a video, a little bit of documentation. Setup is a little involved. Once you get past that, it just basically runs in a tray, and you don't even have to worry about it. So a couple things that we've added to this particular version that some of you may be unaware of. Going to FBA orders, we do have a last time, and what that does, it gives you the ability to be able to reset the last time you checked for orders. Now, originally, based on Amazon's recommendation, you're supposed to use the last time you checked. But we found that the last time you checked isn't always the most accurate. The best thing to use in this case is the last order date and time. So that has put us in a situation where we're actually picking up all the orders that we should. Now the regular active listings or merchant fulfilled orders, we really didn't have an issue with that. But generally speaking, the FBA was a little problematic. So by using this last time and using the last order date there, it pretty much solved that issue. And so it's the same here with the orders as well too. All right, so the last major thing we want to talk about with the integrator is the set ship date when shipped. Okay, now what happens here essentially is when you have an FBA order, when the order comes over, the ship date is also included. In other words, Amazon doesn't send you the order to the items actually shipped. With merchant fulfilled, it's a little different. They'll send you the order, then you ship it, and then you indicate to Amazon that it's been shipped with a tracking number and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, the update file will say the status has been set to shipped, but it doesn't give you a ship date or a tracking number or anything like that. So if you're in a situation where you're not importing your shipping or tracking files into Communique, then you can use this option to automatically set merchant orders to ship and ship date based on the status changing from pending to shipped. And that helps solve that issue where if you want to filter by ship date, what would happen if you don't use this option is the merchant orders will not have a ship date and they just won't show up in the searches. So this was another little addition we added. So short of this and any other major issue that might pop up, I think we pretty much can put a wrap on this version of the integrator, and the integrator can be released later this week. And for those of you who are not using it, it'll give you an opportunity to be able to set this up and get your data coming down automatically. Okay, so let's move on to Communique. Seller Central. So let's see, let's talk about the integrator. So we did talk about last date and time issue, set ship date when option. We talked about it being in use for continuous months. We'll release it this week. The last thing I want to reemphasize is some throttling of other limitations. Amazon limits the number of requests you can make in a particular period. It kind of varies by report. And a point I would make to you is that if you request some of these reports too often or you set your time too low, in other words, your interval between calls, it's possible that Amazon can actually cancel the request. and it takes you a while to regain back your ability to be able to continue making requests. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you get 10 calls, 15 calls when you're asking for orders and things of that nature, and it takes you 1 minute to retrieve back each call you made, meaning that if you use 15 within a minute, then it would take you 15 minutes to get back all 15 again, presupposing you don't use any more. So you have to be careful how you make these calls, and we've set the intervals in the integrator to be in such a situation where this generally shouldn't be a problem for you. Okay, so that takes care of the throttling. All right, let's look at today's agenda for Communique for ASC. We're going to talk about a brand new gross margins dashboard we added. There's some new settlement reports and a couple of FBA issues we want to discuss. There are some order issues, particularly items for multi-level warehouse shipments that pose a particular problem. You're able to find these in reconciliation, and we'll explain a little bit more detail why this happens the way it does. This particular release features a brand new brands and categories section, so that now you can associate SKUs and then sales with brands and categories. We have a bunch of new reports. As a matter of fact, I believe the number is that we have 15 new reports and a new dashboard. We have 3 new themes. Let me go back. There you go. We have 3 new themes, and we've completed the multi-level drill downs, and there are currently available 7 reports. So we've added a fees percent column where applicable. We've probably added that in somewhere in the neighborhood of about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, about 14 reports. Okay, the ASIN, Barcode, FNSKU, and UPC columns have been added to a slew of reports. This just gives you a way of being able to twist and turn and group and ungroup your data in different ways. An example would be, it's possible that you can have one ASIN for multiple SKUs. Same thing is true with the FNSKU. The FNSKU is a fulfillment network SKU, a SKU that Amazon gives to your FBA items. That one SKU can literally have multiple ASINs or even multiple of your own SKUs. So it's important to be able to have those columns in various different reports so that you can group by that and get a better understanding of what the values go for those particular items. All right, so then the last major thing we want to talk about is that we've added Overstock order file support. If you recall from previous webinars, we've talked about the ability at some point in time to be able to open this up to other markets. Thanks to a customer who made a recent purchase Communique. We did work with them very closely to add in the Overstock order file. It's very easy to do, and we'll just show you how to do that a little bit later. Okay, so that pretty much covers today's agenda. Let's go to Communique. Here it is. All right, so this is the main dashboard, as you all know. And so first things first, let's take a look at our new dashboard. It's called the Gross Margins Dashboard. So essentially what the green here indicates that this is the gross margin per period. So right now we're looking at last 30 days. We can look at the last 12 months, last 12 weeks, as you know. So for this illustration, let's just look at last 30 days. So what you're looking at each particular day, you're looking at the value of the margin and then what the margin percent is. And from a right mouse click on the window, you can actually add in, for example, your ship cost, your fees, your COGS, and your revenue to give you a better understanding of what your margins are and what these different values represent. So it's a nice graphical way of being able to do that. And then you can filter by, for example, Amazon only, merchant, all types. So it's a pretty handy dashboard to be taking a look at. I mean, it's one thing to look at gross sales like you do up here. It's another thing to look at actual margins and margin percents. And let's remove those. Okay, so the next section we want to go to is talk about some new settlement reports we've added in. So let's go to settlements. These 2 new reports right here, transaction summary and transaction summary by item. So let's look at the summary. And what we're going to do is here, we're going to look at all transactions for last month. And there you go. So right now what we have is all of the transactions that Amazon has charged your account for last month are located here. And you can actually see the various different categories and buckets of charges. right now probably a good time for you, Rox, to jump in here. And
Yeah, this is a nice new interface. I mean, I use the reconciliation screen extensively every week for one client or another. But this is nice because it just shows you the data in a different format. So if you want to book things by month versus by payout, or just if you like to see things on a chart, being able to go over there and see over on the chart to see everything over at the bar graphs, and you have other interfaces there, right? It does other things like a pie chart, I think.
Not at the moment, no.
Oh, okay. That's something you're talking to. But that's a nice way of looking at things. A lot of people that I work with, when they look at the numbers mean something, yeah. But when they get to see things, in a chart, it clicks a little bit differently. Or being able to see like the percentages already factored in for the margins is really nice. One thing, Tom, if you could show them, because this is what stumped me, and I couldn't get my numbers to quite work out, is how to filter this off of a particular batch. Because I have to admit, the first time I ran it, I totally forgot that we had this other little screen built in here. There we go.
So basically what you would do is you would just say ignore dates. In other words, you don't care what the date range is. The only thing you want is the particular settlement. And the reason why is because the date is already implied with the settlement. Okay, so you don't even have to worry about having a date. There you go. So
and I'll tell you why that's so important. If you're used to, like I've been used to all these years, we always do everything at the settlement, per settlement. And when you look at the date range that they tell you, it's not true. I mean, you've got like a 12 to 36-hour window there, float window. If they say it runs the 5th through the 17th, chances are there's stuff in there from the 4th through the 18th, right? So it's really hard to run this particular interface by a date range. So if you do it by settlement, then you can, see exactly what that settlement, all the fees and all the breakdowns was. Or like I said, if you want to see it by date range, then that's fine too. You've got both options here. This is a lot easier to read in some cases than over on the accounting reconciliation screen. You don't have quite so many lines competing for your attention. So it's a little bit easier to read in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and the accounting summary screen is basically by order or by adjustment item or by other transaction. So as you pointed out, Rox, I mean you can have a lot of transactions in that screen, whereas this is done based on the amount type and amount description, and it's aggregated at a much higher level. So you're not really looking at orders here or anything of that nature. What you're looking at are the charges to your account and the various different buckets that Amazon categorizes that.
And then if you want to go and book into QuickBooks, your breakdown, you can come right here and decide how many accounts do you need in QuickBooks, to really see what's important to you, or do you want to come over here and just get a report with all the different breakdowns? We'll put things in the memo field, for instance, but we don't have accounts for every single charge because there's way too many. But we certainly break out things like, when they give you money back for FDA inventory reimbursement. Amazon counts that as a sale. Personally, I don't. I think it's silly to put it in sales. So, we want to make sure that that's hitting the right account. And on down the list, they have a few other things that they'll count as a sale. It's not really a sale. So this gives you all the breakdown there, and then you can decide what's the most important to see in QuickBooks, and then what you can just refer to here for the additional breakdown. Use your memo field, be consistent, and then you can always run a report in QuickBooks and filter off that memo field. Kind of gives you both results then.
Well, getting back to a point you made earlier, to illustrate a point about the dates here, okay? A customer can place an order one day and not pay it for a day or two or three. As a matter of fact, Amazon says that you can have a pending order for up to 21 days. So that's quite possible. Now, how these dates work are is very straightforward if you understand. You don't actually get the order until it's paid. So in the example I'm kind of given, if you have an order that was taken 2 days ago, but it wasn't paid until today or tomorrow, for example, then you won't receive the order until it's actually paid. Now, how does that affect your settlement? Well, if you have a settlement in between, then you won't get the settlement until you wouldn't get the settlement with the order date in the previous settlement. You would get it in the succeeding settlement. I know it gets a little confusing, but you don't actually get paid for the item until the customer pays for it and you've shipped it. So it's possible you can have an order date that should have been in the previous settlement, but because of a variety of factors, it winds up in a succeeding settlement. Is that right, Rox?
That's right. And to make it just a little more confusing, if you go and look at the dashboards up on Amazon, and I know most of you probably do that, and I get this question, again, almost weekly, you'll go up on the dashboard and you'll filter for Amazon sales or FBA sales, and it comes up with a number that's completely different than what you'll see here or what you'll see, in Stone Edge if you're using that, or some other software that you might be using. Again, they're not using the same filters. So up there it's sales, but not necessarily paid or shipped or whatever. So be careful if you start seeing different numbers. Don't freak out. Just, there's a reason. You just have to understand where that data is coming from. Amazon's not very clear when you look at those dashboards up on their site.
Well, it's because you have a variety of different dates that mean different things, and
exactly.
Not to get people confused, but the example we gave would be an example where an order is taken a while ago, was paid at a different time because it missed the previous settlement. It winds up rolling into the next settlement, and of course, if it's a merchant fulfilled order, then you're waiting for the tracking ID to indicate that it's been shipped. And all these things will factor in at what point the order shows up and at what settlement it shows up in. I mean, the order date will never change. The original order date will always stay the same, but the day it shipped is likely going to be different in this example, and the day it was paid is different, and the day it was settled may also be different too.
Yeah.
So depending on which date you select determines where that order falls in, right?
Exactly. And of course, FBA is going to work differently than your merchant fulfilled, which brings you to this screen, which I love as well, because it's the same thing. You get to see all the detail, and when you really need to try to figure out what's going on, your margins, things like that. All these new screens is really going to help you guys even more than what we had in here already.
All right, so what this does here basically is a settlement transaction summary by item. Okay, so for every single item that comes in through the settlement, and for every single charge for that item, it shows up here. So what we did was to make this quick, we went to last week, but you could do last month, and again, you can go to settlements and pick a particular settlement you want to filter by. It's just that, don't be surprised if it takes a while to run, because, I mean, you can literally have tens of thousands of charges or transactions in each settlement or in any particular given, date period. So we just selected for last week just to make it easy and to show you how this works. So using our grouping technique here, so every single item, you can actually grab this and then look at every SKU that was sold during last week. And from here, you can look at every single order and fees that were charged based on that item.
And just take a moment here to have that happy dance and that aha moment. Group that again, because I can't tell you guys how wonderful this is. You might have heard me talk before. I've got a particular client that does a lot on Amazon, a huge number. And one of the questions early on was, how can we be doing so much more in sales, but the profit is so much less? And what we found by using the tool is that one of his actually two of his absolute best sellers were loss leaders up on FBA. It was really hard to find that out until we started running things through the tool. So if you suspect that you're having the same concerns, this will really help. You can go and look at this ID item and know all the fees that's been charged back to that item. It's huge, not just at the order, but at the item level.
Okay, so moving on, let's go to our order reconciliation, and let's just ignore dates variances only. Okay, all right. So out of the, I don't know, there's tens of thousands of orders in here. Of all those, I mean, there's only 141 out of balance. And let me just see if I can find one here. Let's see, products, compare, yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is what I want to show you right here, okay? This is a particular issue with FBA, and let me explain the issue to you so you understand, okay? When you have a split shipment, meaning a customer places an order and the order is filled in two different FBA warehouses, okay? It's very possible that those items do not ship the same day, and it's also possible for the items to show up in separate settlements, okay? And then the other issue is this. When the FBA order comes down and based on querying the orders based on order date, you get the original order with the one item and then that gets inputted, okay? But when the other one gets shipped, it still has the same order date, and the long and short of it is oftentimes those items get missed, okay? So it's possible that based on the way Amazon is doing their FBA, even if you do it by their best practice, because they split shipments from different warehouses, it's possible that an item can be missed. Now, during reconciliation, we find that here. So basically what we've looked at here is this particular item right here likely came from a different warehouse. As a matter of fact, if you look at the shipment IDs, they're different. So at the very least, we know they shipped at a different time, okay? And more than likely, they came from two different warehouses. So what happened here is that this item came over in the original FBA order. This one had not been shipped yet, and because of that, they did not give you the item as being ordered. Once the item had shipped, and now it's available as an item that's being shipped, but the problem is that since we already received the order, this does not show up again in the FBA orders to be able to download. I hope that's not too confusing, but I mean, that's what's happening here. So anyways, what we're going to do, not in this version, but in the next version that goes out, we're going to give you a way to be able to add missing items. So when you have particular situations like this with FBA, you can just add it to the order and it will help it balance out. Now, if you notice, of the 141 transactions we have here out of balance, every single one of them is FBA. And there are a couple little peculiarities that go on with FBA that we found. One I just described to you about missing items and why they're missing. Another example would be if you have split settlements, and we can find that by looking. I'm sure there's some here. There's got to be. And basically the way you find a split settlement is when you have the same order right here, the same exact order, different settlement IDs. This is a split shot settlement. So there are some peculiarities that go on with FBA, and this utility, or the reconciliation part of it, helps find those. And in the case with split settlements, you would just say, you would reconcile, say, split settlement, and it would go away, basically. So if we were to go look at this, we would see that here, there's 16 items, and this is, in fact, what happened, different shipment IDs. 15 of them were shipped from at one time, one was shipped another time. And this is the actual order that came over, okay, 16. So that's where the split settlement came in. This one got shipped a different time. And even though it says from the same warehouse, it's possible they were all from the same warehouse. It's just that they missed one, they shipped it out later. But these are the kind of things you run across when you're reconciling FBA and dealing with that kind of stuff. So as you notice, there's no merchant fulfilled. It's all FBA, and these are the ones that are out of balance. And the reasons why we gave are pretty much why they are. Anything you want to add, Rox?
No, that's pretty good. I know a lot of people try to reconcile their Amazon account like they do any other bank account. And while you do need to reconcile it, it doesn't work exactly like your PayPal or your other bank accounts because of these. So a lot of times you guys are probably seeing a float in there. One payout, it seems like that account's a little short. The next payout, the Amazon account may seem like it's a little overstated. These are the reasons why. And so instead of in the past, we just would say, well, this is typically why, and you could try to trudge through all those spreadsheets and downloads to figure it out. Now you can go right into here and see why and validate that your numbers are good.
Yeah, that's right. The individual detail you can see in the various different reports we looked at, but if you're trying to balance your bank statements with deposits, this amount right here for each settlement that comes in is exactly what should show up in your bank statement on these various dates.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about some of the other features outside of settlements. What I wanted to talk to you about is this new report in here we have, which is called Product Replenishment by FN SKU. This is another one of those issues with FBA. Example might be you have an FBA item, you have one SKU assigned to it, there's an FN SKU assigned to it from the FBA, and let's say for whatever reason your pallet label falls off, whatever, and they figured out, okay, it's this item that belongs to you, and because they don't have your SKU, they now create a brand new SKU. And that's an example of how you can have two SKUs for the same FN SKU. So with that in mind, we created this replenish it by FN SKU, so we're aggregating everything together by that one SKU. And what we're listing here are your individual SKUs. So you can see there's 2 SKUs assigned to this one FN SKU. We got more up here. Here's 2, and here's 3. Here's 3. So basically, what it boils down to is that you have 3 SKUs. 3 of these SKUs are sharing the same FN SKU. And the reason why that's kind of important is because when you send these 3 SKUs to Amazon, they're going to get associated with this one FN SKU. So you need to make sure that whatever velocity you have for these sales for these 3 SKUs, are tied to that one FN SKU, and make sure that whatever quantity on hand and whatever recommended orders are for the one FN SKU, not necessarily for the 3 internal SKUs that you have. So this report was created to be able to handle that kind of circumstance. Okay, so let's move over and talk about brands. And so you can kind of look at brands. This is our Brand Explorer. I'll give you an example of a brand. A brand would be like Oakley. Oakley sells sunglasses. And within that brand, you can have a brand name, like, say, for example, Bat Wolf Glasses. Okay. So this would be an example of a brand or a brand name that you can actually create in here and then be able to associate your SKUs that belong with that brand, and then be able to go and do filtering and do sales analysis, things of that nature with that particular brand. Now, brands can also be thought of as product lines. It's quite possible you could say this is a product line as opposed to a brand. It's kind of like the same thing. Categories, we're not, and I'll emphasize, these are not Amazon categories. These are categories that you create yourself and associate your SKUs with a particular categories. So, for example, you could say, I have products that belong, in kitchen and dining, products that belong under rugs, or products that belong under towels, and then you can categorize them that way. So basically, they're different than brands and product lines. This gives you a way to be able to associate and group SKUs together that are related, and that way you can kind of get a pulse of what kind of performance those SKUs are having in comparison to others in your product line. So with that in mind, we've added a bunch of new reports to come up here to orders. You can see brand sales, and you can also see category sales. We also added analysis by brand, analysis by category, and then variance by brand, variance by category. So we'll run to do brand sales by date. We're looking at the last 30 days. Here they are. And the same thing applies to category sales by date. Same thing. Now, what I will show you is that we talked about the multi-level drill downs, display items, for example. And we finished putting in all the drill downs we're going to put in. So let's go look at this right here. So now that we're looking at a category, for example, we're looking at all the SKUs that are associated with that category. And at the end of each of those, we get a grand total. Let's see. Let's find one that's not quite so big. There we go. So that's kind of the idea of the multi-level drill down. So we have a category, and then all the SKUs assigned to category, and we can do the same exact thing to brands.
Now, personally, I think this is a huge enhancement because, again, one of the questions that we get consistently is how to monitor what's selling well. I mean, yeah, there's tools up there with Amazon, but it's not necessarily user-friendly or gives you everything that you need. So if you really want to boost your, your presence and your sales, this is a good way. This is a good start, for doing that, to see what's really going on. We'll ask people, what's your best seller? And most people will say whatever it is that they like to sell or they like to use. But what you see in black and white on paper on a report, a lot of times is very different. So, there's no bias when the numbers are what the numbers are,
So we can knock out 2 things here. So basically, as Brock just pointed out, these are your top sellers. These would be your top 25, and you can control what number you set here, or even whether you use a literal number or use a percentage. Okay, so we're looking back the last 90 days. These would be your top sellers, and I just added that fee percent column that we just talked about here. So what you'll be able to do is look at, okay, these are the sales, the COGS, the chip cost. These are the fees, and this is the fees percent. So it's telling you that based on the fee charges, and we just do it very simply, it's fees divided by sales gets you fee percent. Very simple, okay? And so that tells you that this product is running fee percent of 31.68. Now, let me clarify something here for you, okay? And this is particularly true on FBA items. Sometimes when you have promotions and other things like that, or shipping is charged, FBA will give you shipping and then turn around and take it back into fees, okay? That kind of has a habit of kind of inflating the fee percent a little bit because they're giving you the ship, and then of course that's part of sales, and then they're taking it back as part of the fee. So that kind of elevates the fee percent a little bit. It's not clear at this point in time how we can identify those beforehand and filter those out because we don't actually get that oftentimes until it's settled. So at any rate, just bear that in mind that if you have some orders in here, particularly FBA, where FBA is giving you the shipping and then turn around and taking it back out in fees, that it can elevate your fee percent a little bit. But at any rate, we have put this fee percent on a bunch of different reports so that you can actually look at, okay, not only is this the gross fees charged for these items over a particular period of time, but this is what the fee percent is representing.
And I'm sure you have too. I've worked with many clients over the years where you can really lose your butt if you're not careful and monitor this stuff. Because in the example I gave earlier, your sales could go up and be great numbers, but your profit is, way, way down, and you need to identify quickly before it puts your business at risk. Because I've seen it done. I've seen people go out of business by not monitoring this kind of information.
A good example is the loss leader you mentioned earlier, where if you have a per item charge, per order charge, per item weight fee charge, I mean, you might have a small, inexpensive, or say just an inexpensive item where you don't have a great margin to begin with, and you start tacking all these fees on top of it through FBA, I mean, you can be in the hole big time. Before you even know it, you had a huge loss.
Exactly, and that's what's happened to a number of clients I've worked with over the years. If you're losing 50 cents or $1 or $3, whatever, every time you sell something, and it's one of your top sellers, it doesn't take long to put you upside down overall.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at a variety of reports like this, being able to analyze the fees and understand what the fee percent are, and then looking at the, getting back to talk about the settlements over here, we're looking at transaction summaries, summary by item. It gives you a way to be able to twist and turn and look at things and be able to figure out whether or not this makes sense for you. As you know, we have chart view here, so you can flip between data view and chart view. It's a feature we've had for a while. Okay, so let's go back and look at what else we need to talk about. So we did gross margin dashboard, settlement reports, FBA issues. We talked about that. Brands and categories. We talked about some of the new reports, multi-level drill downs, fee percent, columns. Okay, so let's talk about ASIN, barcode, FNSKU, and UPC columns. We haven't spoken about that just yet. Let's get back over here. There we go. So display here. Let's go to, let's see, orders, product sales. We have that there. Okay, so add brand category. Let's see. Let's do products as an example. So we can add in, ASIN is here by default, so there's not an option you can choose, but you can add in FNSKU, UPC, and barcode. And the advantage being that once you have these, you can group by them, and you can look to see, in this example, if you have more than one FNSKU for each of these, or more than one SKU for each FNSKU. So here, this one has 33, probably because there's no FNSKU assigned to it. So as I mentioned, we have the ASIN, barcode, FNSKU, and the UPC columns added to this. All right, so let's go look at and see. Okay, Overstock order file supports, last thing we want to talk about. So getting back to some of our previous discussions about multiple markets, as you can see down here, we now added Overstock order files. So essentially, you can download the order file from Overstock, point this to there, add your market. So you can actually create a market. We'll call it Overstock, and I can show you how to do that. You just come over to the markets area here. We took one that was Amazon, I think, I forget where, oh yeah, Australia, and then we just renamed it to Overstock. So there is a way to be able to import multiple markets. Right now, we're doing Amazon, Merchant Fulfilled, and FBA, and then we've added Overstock support. over the course of time, we're going to try to add in other markets as well too, depending on the popularity. All right, so from here you can see Overstock orders file, Overstock, grab the feed file, and then import it. Now I will tell you that there isn't a whole in the Overstock file. I mean, obviously you have product information, sales cost, that sort of thing. There are no fees with the way Overstock works, and if I'm not mistaken, there aren't any contact info. So we had to kind of massage the data a little bit to make it work into our particular model. An example would be Amazon gives a unique email address for every account. Well, Overstock doesn't have that. So what we do is we use an internal algorithm to create something very similar, so that if you import future Overstock files, the idea being that if it's a returning customer, there would be a way to be able to identify that and associate that with an existing account, as opposed to keeping or continuing to add new customer records. So there's a few little things we had to do like that to be able to make the Overstock file work in our Amazon model, but it works just fine, and our customers have been using it and been very pleased with it. Okay, so at this point, I think that pretty much covers a lot of the new stuff we've added in. Rox, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, so for those of you who are interested, we do have custom programming services available. So we do reports and data analyzers, utilities and applets, MWS integration and customization. We've done things like quantity on hand and synchronization, supplier inventory, fulfillment center and order processing, and other third-party integrations. Our roadmap. Okay, so next release, well, we actually had planned to have it in this release, but next release will definitely have the variations, also known as parent SKUs. Batch processing and updating data. We are going to try and put more of that in here. Let me show you one that we've added under products. We have a tool here called Update COGS for Orders. What we do, how this works is very simple, okay? Let's say you imported or you added a product, and then you imported some orders, and the product didn't have cost information, so what winds up happening, those orders that are imported with that SKU have zero COGS, okay? So we put in the ability to be able to go in and say, okay, find me all orders that have zero COGS. We want to go ahead and update those and recalculate them so that now has the correct cost of goods. So when we get back to, talking about, let's go back over here, talking about batch processing and updating data, we're talking about, these sorts of things like this to make life a little bit easier for you. Okay, so let's go back here. We're going to be working on purchase orders and supplier invoices. We already mentioned other marketplaces and shopping carts, so we've got Overstock.com. We'll be looking at integrating others as we go on. QuickBooks integration has a very high priority for us, so we're going to be working on that, trying to, yeah, there you go, trying to be able to push the data out from here into QuickBooks. I'm going to be working with Rox, so we're going to figure out the best way to do that. And hopefully by the next release we have something like that. And we've been talking about an enterprise edition, for customers that do a very high volume. In other words, if you're going to max out the current database to about 2 gigs, you're going to have to move to an enterprise platform. I would say if you go over a gig in size, you probably need to think about an enterprise platform. We're not at that point just yet, but I think we're going to be having some customers towards the latter part of the year who will be in that situation. Hopefully we'll have an enterprise version available. And then availability and pricing, the new version should be available July 1st. There's a trial available, it has limited functionality. You'll know immediately if this is right for you. The price, standard license is $4.95 for a single user. 1-year software assurance is $95. I would recommend very highly that you buy that, because that means that any new changes or new features that come out within the year, you get them free. The site license is $7.95. Multiple users, there's no limit, so you can install as many computers as you like. The software insurance is $195, and for the cost and pricing of enterprise, we'll just have to wait and see. We're not sure, but once it's available, we'll have a better idea of what the pricing will be. Okay, so to learn more, you can contact sales@altarian.com. You can visit our forum at communique.vbulletin.net, and for QuickBooks assistance, Rox is glad to help you at rox@consulting4qb.com. And now we'll open this up to any questions you might have. All right, so let's see what questions we have. All right, so so the question is, does the data dump into QB desktop or into QBO, or is this just summary info?
So when we do the QuickBooks integration, it doesn't do that now, obviously, and you can just post your entries in by hand using the reconciliation piece of it. That's going to give you all the numbers that you need. When we do the integration, it's going to be summary level. QuickBooks would just explode if you tried to bring this over, in any kind of detail. So it's going to be your sales and your fees and your COGS and things like that. Inventory, if you're using inventory values. It'd be too much to try to bring it in any other way.
Well, I can tell you that, the database that we're using right now, I would say it's a little on the moderate side. It's not exactly, one of the larger ones, of course, but even with that, I mean, just the number of transactions you have coming in are just tremendous. So, I mean, as your clients get bigger and bigger, those numbers are going to get bigger and bigger. So then you have to ask yourself, I mean, do you really need all that transaction detail in QuickBooks?
Right, and that's the bottom line is you don't. QuickBooks needs to be your financial package, right? That's your sales, your fees, your inventory, your COGS. You want to go to whatever you're using for, your order management or your data, your database to go and get all that detail and drill down. QuickBooks simply couldn't handle it if you tried to do it the quote-unquote QuickBooks way, the Intuit way. It would, even with Enterprise Edition, it would be a dog in no time. It would be so slow. You'd be starting a new file every time you turned around, so it wouldn't be worth it.
Anyway, and quite frankly, I mean, do you really need to duplicate data in two different places? And so you ask that question, and then, what we've just shown with Communique and its features and capabilities, it's certainly better geared to handling those details than anything else.
You would wait so long for a report to generate in QuickBooks that, you turn gray.
That's right. And so basically, Communique for ASC has been optimized to be able to work with this detail and orders and settlements and all that kind of stuff. And so it's geared that way, whereas QuickBooks is not. So you really have to kind of decide for yourself, what level of detail you want in QuickBooks. So I think you've answered the question in the sense that when we do the QuickBooks integration, it's going to be basically at the summary level.
Summary level per day. So you'd have your sales and your fees and all that good stuff per day.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Anything anyone needs to ask? All right, Rox, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think we're good. Definitely, as you guys are using this, send feedback. We always like to hear feedback. And there's a forum. I don't know if you've showed them or mentioned the forum.
Okay, sure.
They can go to for additional information and webinars and things like that and post questions.
All right. So basically, you can come to our website, Altarian.com, Communique for Amazon Seller Central, and here are our webinars. This is where we're going to post this webinar up here tomorrow. And we have videos. Down here, we'll be adding some more. As a matter of fact, I'll be working this week to add a video for the Seller Central integration and to do some more of these. So if you want to come out and find out some more information about Amazon Seller Central, here is where you go. And then we have our forum here, communique.vbulletin.net. You're welcome to come out here and look at some info. We are posting up articles periodically. If you want to ask a question, please post it here so everybody can see it, and then we can answer just one time. Let's see, let's see. All right, so if there are no more questions, I want to thank you all for attending our webinar today. As I mentioned, the webinar will be posted tomorrow, so you're welcome to come back and take a look at it. If you have any additional questions, you can either send them to sales@altarian.com or text support, TECHSUPPORT @Altarian, ALTAIREON.com. Thank you very much. Y'all have a nice day, and thank you for joining our webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great July 4th.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.